Are we live? Hi there, Dragon Ball Infinity. It's me, Riz, here, and this is a roleplay review for A Flower Cut Before Its Bloom. Now, the characters in this roleplay are going to be Koshoro, the Tiger Lilies, Tamayo, Gujaro, Vonda, and Tia. The type is going to be training for Key Transfer, Energy Ball, and Sense / drama, and the arc it belongs to is the Tiger, the Wolf, and the Bear. This review is going to be very short. Pretty much, it's perfect. You should read it. I'll see you guys in the chat channel. Just kidding. But no, this log is very, very good. I think that there's so much that I like about this log. It's hard to review it without it just coming off as me telling Ike that he is a superb writer and that everything he's done is golden. But it really, really is good. So as I was reading through the log itself, it is right after the fight. Well, not right after the fight, but some time has passed between the fight with Nova and Koshoro and the Dragon Ball conflict. And as it opens up, it's them. They've gone Amazon shopping, and they're getting airlifted and dropped. Sorry, their equipment, their gear, and it was a really cute and really fun aspect of this log. And it's little stuff like that that really makes these role plays seem very much real, active, and alive. Because it's like who wouldn't think or who would think of that, right? Who would think of we're in the middle of this monster hunter area and we're just gonna get some stuff, airlifted in to us, and it's like geese for them with sanctuary in kanji written on the back. I in my head canon they're getting snacks that they love that they haven't had for a while, and like perfume. Maybe somebody got like a really comfy pair of shoes just because they're tired of walking around in their training shoes and things like that. And they also get this really cool weighted gear. And Ike has a very, very creative mind. And like I am incredibly jealous that I can't think of something this cool without it seeming like I'm just trying to copy or emulate him. But the weighted training gear that he pretty much tells us about in this log that Koshoro is putting on is like really, really heavy and uncomfortable. And it's kind of like once you put it on, you can't then take it off. You have to pull this rip cord, and it seems like it kind of collapses off of you, which I thought was really smart and ingenious. It's almost like capsule gear that you can wear, and I thought that was really a wonderful touch. And it was very hard for me to pull myself away from rereading this. Uh, and the log then continues on to where after they put this gear on, they start to kind of train with one another. And in the previous training logs that they did, everybody kind of had their thing. So one person led meditation, another person led stretching, another person was meal prep, all that. It's in my last review of Koshoro's log if you want to know about it. But we didn't ever see what Ko was good at, what he led in the training montage. So we get that here. And I'm not going to lie, I was here live for the end of this log, so I know how it ended before I started reading it. And I'm reading this part where they start to do the energy ball training, or actually, they start off with key transfer. So when they're starting to do the key transfer training, I'm in my head kind of thinking, like, okay, well, how does this get from there to where I know that it ends? This kind of seems like it's a separate log. And even as I was reading through this, I was like, this is all really cool, but it's a separate log. But we'll come back to that. Because the way that he goes about explaining how to do key transfer something that I really love and enjoy. I am of the school of slow and steady wins the race, especially when it comes to skills. I love when people deep dive into explaining how to them and to their character these supernatural abilities work and how they feel, and almost a how can we make them as real as possible, rather than I just lift myself on a bed of key and I fly away, or I just give you my energy, here you go. Excuse me. So yeah, I love that we're getting a slow burn on how Koshoro is now explaining to these people, this is what my energy feels like. And in our school, which he really is creating his own school of combat and training, this is how we let ki flow through us. And that this is how it feels to go from one person to another. And the fact that this key makes it around the group about 3 or 4 times, it felt very quick on page, but also very slow and methodical on page as well. So as a person who's reading it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going maybe 5. I won't even call these posts because he kind of does a new post for every person that's talking. I would say like maybe 5 total rounds, but in the story, it could have been hours that they have been doing this, and it was really well done. I never felt like I needed to skim or skip over what I was reading. Everybody had pertinent and on point dialogue to add to the conversation, to add to the story, and not just be filler to it. And these are things that Eichenbahn is just very good at. If you're still working on your story, buddy, like, I can see that what you've been studying and working on is coming through in your role play, and it's really coming together pretty well. And so they go through this key transfer just so that everybody gets a feel for key and energy, and then they have this really interesting, very unique to what we've seen on page, and it's not very unique to our setting, but I don't think anybody has ever approached creating an energy ball for NPCs this way, where they all share their energy, and Ko kind of tells them, like, now that you've felt energy, now I'm going to help you use my energy to form an energy ball. And he kind of walks through it with everyone, and he even goes through to explain the characters' personalities through the way that they manipulate energy. To where, some people feel like it's, I think the one line was that, like, you are the ocean, and I'm one shore, you're the other shore, and the energy is the ocean in between. And I'm gonna pass it from me to you, and then we're gonna form it together. And then when they go to do it by themselves, it's you are now both sides, and one person creates like a small grape, the other person creates a cherry, and then the person who was struggling all along, it's because, well, they just had too much, right? Like, that's not a trope that's unique to our page or setting. Ichigo had that from Bleach, so did Kenpachi, where they just had so much spiritual pressure that they couldn't form it the way that normal people do. But the fact that of this group of people, one person was able to do it very easily, Sakura, one person could do it, but they had no control of it, Naruto, and then you had some person who had too much of it and they couldn't really control it and they kept breaking it, Sasuke. So it's cool to see, like, that being done, and that much tender and care being put into NPCs. And the other thing that just this bit of training does narratively is it separates Koshoro from the NPCs, right? And what I mean by that is that these are a group of people who are all talented. They are, capable martial artists. They can do great feats on their own. But what is stopping these NPCs from being a main character, right? What is it that is just what is the thing that Ko has that makes him a main player and a main character? And it's this. right? That he was able to do something like this that is beyond the scope of people, right? The miracle that happens in the Dragon Ball setting comes naturally to him, and he can teach it to other people to where they can do it. They just can't do it as well as him, because that's what separates him. That is what makes him special. That is why he is a main character, and his brother, though his brother was stronger, was not, right? And I love that it's a very subtle way of saying, this is why I'm special, this is why I'm the main character, without it being him being the main character, right? I think I've said this before, where everybody's laying on the floor dead. He's the only person who can show up and stop him. No, it's everybody is trying so hard, and they're almost there. They've almost climbed the mountain, but who's the one that can get over it? It's Ko, and we see that here in this log while they're training. So I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And then when they go to sense, that's when it is a little different, right? So we have here Gojaro is saying that, I know how to, like, he's like, you don't know how to sense energy? Spinna and I learned it together. Sorry, I'm still a little congested, so I'm going to sound a little gross right now. But two reasons why this is great, right? This is, again, why I think that Ike's personal writing to be an actual writer is starting to leak through. So before, where I was saying, like, what the hell does this log, like, this upper part has absolutely nothing to do with what the story is in this log, right? Has nothing to do with it, except for the fact of this line right here. Spinna and I learned how to sense energy together. Spinna is the character who was killed by Fusen, right? Spinna is the character who is not present here. And earlier in the log, they kind of mentioned it, like, hey, where's Tia? Where's Spinna? I'm like, oh, they must be, they're lovebirds. Maybe they're off doing whatever in the woods. And so we kind of forget about him. We just kind of, shelve him, like, oh, we as the reader know narratively where he is. He's just not present. And then at the end of the first chapter of this, we mention him again. We mention him that, hey, I learned this technique that I'm about to show you guys with this guy that's not here. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about him. And then they go on to go into sense, and this this version of sense, this explanation of power, also very unique, very interesting. I won't say that I don't think it's accurate, but it has some plot holes in it, where basically he says that he thinks that there is something that connects all of us, and that there's a power inside the sun, and within the sun, that power is shared with everything that the sun touches. So obviously the sun beams down light onto Earth, and so that power is beamed down to Earth, and that is the energy, in a sense, that they feel, that they sense. And beautiful idea. The only thing I would just say is that, well, okay, then what about the planets who have no suns, right? Where does energy come from? Maybe somewhere different. Maybe that is the canon on Earth, and that's why we call it chi. That's why we call it talent. That's why we call it zantetsu. That's why it has all this different names, because it literally is something different all across the universe. But I thought that was really great. And he basically says that sensing energy is just being aware of how it's transferred. So not only are we making a reference back to the original thing that Ko taught us, tying it all together, but we're also talking about the character who's not present. So we're tying in Spinna, who is a main focus of the story later, kind of keeping him in the back of our mind. It's tying back to the beginning of the log. It's tying back to everything that Ko said. It's really making this like a perfect headcanon. So clearly Ike thought this through very well, and it shows. It shows on page. And, Ko is kind of, Gojaro is kind of going through and sensing and kind of feeling through things. He says that there's a deer in the heather nearby, and that's where it then gets interesting. Koshoro starts to sense something, and he basically senses the end of the Fusion fight where he takes Spina's life. So now we have our climax, right? We are at the apex of our story. We've had all this build up, and immediately there's a payoff for it, and it's that he senses Spina. So they find Tia, who was the Hydian who was running away, and yeah, he's no longer with us. And at this point, so this is the part where I saw it on page happening live, and yeah, they are sad that their friend is dead. And again, this is where Ko kind of separates himself, where he says, or sorry, Tamayo says, you need to say something. They need you to say something. You are our leader here. Like if you don't start to repair their broken hearts with your words right now, they will lay broken forever. And yeah, it's sad. The log itself is a well thought out plan and execution. These characters, these NPCs, have so much personality in between them. Even though they don't have a lot of, I won't say they don't have a lot of screen time, but they just don't have a lot of dialogue, but then they do, right? Like just the way that Vonda speaks is so different from the way that Tamayo speaks, which is so different from, the color coding really helps. It immensely helps. But these characters have really come alive. And I would say that any one of them could be, Ko's one follower. And I think that would be a cool idea, an interesting idea. But that's also why I want to limit how many followers people have, because in this situation right here, right now, it's going to be very hard to narratively say why these 5 people just don't go find the wolf and beat the shit out of him, right? And I know that we've given the wolf some tools to help him fight off against being the one villain in this sanctuary of heroes, really. But that's why I would say, like, okay, if you're gonna have followers, let's limit how many, because yeah, it wouldn't even be a fair fight, even if they're all tier 0 and then Ko's tier 1. 2 tier 1s are going to be even, and then all these extra help is going to make it very unfair. But the last thing I wanted to say is, like, these characters, again, they're very alive. They really remind me of the side characters from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because those characters, Jesse, Biggs, Wedge, even Barrett and Tifa, they, in the first half of OG Final Fantasy VII, last for about 45 minutes before they're immediately killed off, and you kind of never think about them again. They don't really talk about them. They're just like, oh yeah, remember the old gang? They were dead. But in the remake, I mean, you spend so much time with them, and they have so much personality that comes through, that when it's their time to go, like, it's way more impactful and it's way more meaningful. And even though Spina wasn't here in this log, he was there, right? Like, his connection to this group is felt through them, because, again, he left part of himself there by teaching them how to sense energy. So every time they go to sense, that's a part of him that exists with them. So I would be very sad if the rest of these guys go out the way that he did, where it's just kind of like a one-off. I don't want to see any of these people, like, die off screen. I don't... it's almost like I don't want them to die, And if they do, I want it to have the same tender and care that their life was given on page. So, great job, Ko. Everybody should read this log. It's a fantastic log. And I got a couple seconds left. So I would say for this one, for people who aren't familiar with our new grading scale of 1 to 7, I mean, this is gonna probably get a 7. I'm going to give it 5 greens and a couple of reds because not only does it push a story narratively, it progresses the arc that this arc has desperately needed, but also it shows that, Ko is training. He is trying to improve himself in places where he may have felt he was, had a weakness, or in places where he felt he was strong and he just needs to improve it. So absolutely, I feel like he got stronger in this log, which is why I would do, 5 green, 2 red. Good job, Ko. My name is Riz. Thank you once again for your time, and I will see you guys later.